Hi there, students. Just so that you know, your first task for today is to complete the Review What You Know page. So that's the page that you see here, page 265. So I'm going to ask you to pause the video while you do that, and then come back and you can check your answers to the vocabulary, order of operations, and equivalent expressions. Let's go ahead and take care of this first before you go on to lesson 5-1 and the notes that go with that. All right, so here you have your answers for the Review What You Know page. Go ahead and pause the video while you check your answers, and if you need help with anything, ask the substitute teacher, or you can wait and ask me when I return tomorrow. All right, lesson 5-1, write and evaluate algebraic expressions. Let me move that page back. There we go. All right, so let's take a look here. Today we're going to be talking about how we can both write and evaluate algebraic expressions. So take a look at your solve and discuss it. I'm going to erase my little line there. There we go. And what I want you to do is see if you can determine how to arrange each of those expressions on the yellow sticky notes so that they fall into 3 categories. And within each category, what we're looking for is how can we show that these expressions are indeed the same. So try to divide them into 3 categories and then come back and you'll check your work in just a minute and see how you did. So to give you a little bit of a head start, I have already created 3 categories for you using 3 of those expressions. And I want you to see if you can figure out where the other 6 expressions will go so that you sort them into categories where they have similar expressions. Pause the video and see what you can do and come back and check your answers. Okay, take a look at these 3 categories. And just keep in mind, if you didn't quite get those sorted, then that's what this lesson is all about. So we're going to be learning about how to use expressions and how to evaluate them and to write them. So again, if you didn't quite get this, it will either be in this lesson or in lessons coming up. Now let's take a look at example 1. In example 1, we are going to write expressions that represent situations. An automatic dog feeder dispenses 2/5 cup of dog food each day. What expression can the dog owner use to determine the amount of food left in the feeder after D days? In other words, we know how much the dog is being fed each day, and we know how much food is in the feeder, but what we don't know is how many days the dog will be fed. But we don't need that information because we're not asked a specific answer to the question. Instead, we are asked to write an expression that we could use to find the answer if we knew how many days the dog had been fed. So one strategy that you can use is to think about what a bar diagram would look like to represent the situation. First, notice that in the bar diagram, we know the total amount of food that the dog has in the feeder, and that's the 20 cups. So to find the amount that we have remaining, we need to simply take the 20 cups of food that we start with, and then we're going to be subtracting out the amount that the dog eats. Well, if we know that the dog eats 2/5 of a cup each day, then we can find the total amount of food that the dog eats by multiplying 2/5 times however many days that we are feeding that dog from the feeder, and then subtract that from the 20 cups to determine how much food remains. So in this problem, we use D as a variable to represent the number of days that the dog is being fed from the feeder. So 20 is our beginning number, that's our number of cups of food. Subtract 2/5 times D, which means 2/5 of a cup times the number of days that the dog is being fed from that feeder, is going to tell us how much food remains in the feeder after that number of days. Now take a look at the try it. Misumi started with $217 in her bank account. She deposits $25.50 each week and never withdraws any money. What expression can Misumi use to determine her account balance after W weeks? In other words, we don't know how many weeks she's going to be saving, but we do know that she saves $25.50 every week. So what that means is that the $25.50 times the W, however many weeks she is saving, will tell us a total amount of money that she has saved altogether. But then we also have her initial deposit. And that initial deposit of $217 tells us how much she started with, and we're going to add to that balance the $25.50 each week. So if I take her initial deposit and I add to that $25.50 times the number of weeks that she saves, I'll get a total account balance after W weeks. In the convince me statement, they ask us how did we determine which value to use for the constant and which value to use for the coefficient. So these are two new vocabulary words that we need to be able to define. For this problem, the constant is the number that stays the same in the problem. If it stays the same, then it is a constant value. 217, which is Misumi's initial deposit into her bank account, is the constant value. No matter what, she put $217 in her account. That amount does not change. What changes in this problem is her total savings. The coefficient is the number that's multiplied by the variable. In this problem, the coefficient is $25.50 because that amount of money that she saves in her account directly depends on the number of weeks that she saves her money. So coefficient is the number that is multiplied by the variable and therefore is a changing amount in each problem because it's based on what the variable is equal to. Now let's take a look at example 2. In this example, we're going to learn to evaluate expressions. The expression $9.99 D plus $12.99 C can be used to find the total cost of D pounds of almonds and C pounds of cashews. How much does it cost to buy 1 1/2 pounds of almonds and 2 1/2 pounds of cashews? Well, in this problem, we look at the expression first, and we know that the $9.99 goes with the price of the almonds and the $12.99 goes with the price of the cashews. When I take the price of almonds and multiply times 1 1/2, then I get the cost for 1 1/2 pounds of the almonds. I'm going to do the same thing with the cashews. $12.99 times the 2 1/2. Remember, the 2 1/2 represents how many pounds of cashews you're purchasing. So now take a look at those two totals. Since this is money, we need to round each of those to the nearest penny. So the 14 985 thousandths plus 32 475 thousandths, when you add them together, you get $47.46. So it will cost $47.46 to buy 1 1/2 pounds of almonds and 2 1/2 pounds of cashews. When you have money and you get to the end of the problem, just make sure that you are dealing only in dollars and cents. So 2 places after the decimal. Now I want you to try the try it problem that goes with example 2. Pause the video while you're trying it and then come back and check your answer. Go ahead and take a look at my work when I evaluated that expression. So since the scooter was rented for 3½ hours, substitute 3½ in place of S in your expression. So here's the S, and we substituted in 3½ Do the same thing for the watercraft. It was rented for 1 3/4 hours, so you're substituting that number in place of W. Now, I notice that you have both decimals and fractions. In this problem, because you're dealing in money, it may be easier to change the fractions and mixed numbers into their decimal form before you multiply. Once you multiply, you should get $54.25 to rent the scooter and $39.90 to rent the watercraft, which makes a total amount of money of $94.15. Now take a look at example 3. In example 3, you are asked to do two things. You are asked to both write and evaluate an expression. Malik and two friends earn M dollars in 1 week doing odd jobs. They split the earnings so that each friend gets 1/3 of the total earnings. Malik uses $32.50 of his earnings on lunch each week. Last week, the three friends earned $963. How much money did Malik have left after paying for lunch? Well, in this problem, the first thing that we need to do is we need to set up the expression that describes how much money Malik has left. Remember that each friend, there are 3 of them, right? Malik and 2 friends, gets 1/3 of the total dollars earned each week. And the total dollars earned each week is represented by M. So 1/3 times M first describes how much money each of the friends gets. Then you'll notice that the expression here says minus $32.50 or 32 5/10. That's the amount of money that Malik uses for lunch. So we're going to subtract that from his earnings for the week to determine how much money he has left. Next in the problem, we're going to evaluate. That's this step right here. And you'll notice that we have replaced the M, or the amount of dollars that the friends earned, with 963, because that's the amount of money they earned that week. 1/3 of $963, take away $32.50 that Malik spends on lunch, is equal to $288.50. So that tells us how much money Malik has left from last week's paycheck after paying for lunch. Now try it that goes with example 3. I'm going to ask you to pause the video and try to set up the expression first. Then we'll come back and check to make sure the expression is correct before I ask you to solve it. Okay, take a look at the problem. Amelia earns $8.74 per hour plus a gas allowance of $3.50 per day at her job. How much does Amelia's job pay in a day when she works 5½ hours? Write an expression and evaluate for 5½ hours. So notice here that the expression that I've written shows the $8.74 that Amelia earns per hour, that's the H here that I'm multiplying by, plus she gets an extra $3.50 per day in gas allowance. So the money that she earns is an hourly rate, so we have to multiply that times the number of hours that she works. But don't forget that she also gets extra money for gas each day. That's the extra $3.50. Pause the video and evaluate your expression now for working 5½ hours to determine how much Amelia earns that day. All right, check your answer and see how you did. Don't forget the 5½ you can change to a decimal before you multiply it times the $8.74 per hour that she works. Now I want you to try the Do You Know How questions 4, 5, 6, and 7. When you're done, come back and check your answers to see how you did. All right, go ahead and pause the video while you check your answers and your work. And then in just a moment, we'll go on to the next page. Practice the skill of writing and evaluating expressions on your practice and problem solving page. This problem's 8 through 16 on the front and 17 through 21, I believe, on the back. And when you're done with the practice that you need to make sure that you are able to write and evaluate expressions, then come back and check your answers. So pause the video while you're working and then come back and check your answers when you're finished. All right, go ahead and check your answers to 8 through 16 before you flip the page. You might need to pause the video for a moment while you check your work and your answers. All right, same thing here on the back side with 17 through 21. Go ahead and pause the video while you try to solve these questions and then come back and check your answers. All right, go ahead and take a look at your answers here. If you need to, pause the video while you check, and then when you are finished checking, you have completed lesson 5-1.